Hey guys, Pete here. This will be my Mr. Robot Season 4 Episode 7 recap and review. The episode was titled 407 Proxy Authentication Required, and it was written and directed by Sam Esmail. It was a doozy of an episode to be sure, a big twist, lots of tension, and thank goodness the end of Vera. A few weeks ago I learned the term bottle episode. It was mostly from complaints people had about episode 4. When I realized the entirety of this episode took place in 2 rooms with just 6 actors involved, I was like, hey, I know what this is. It's a bottle episode. Only the restrictions they put on this, it really seemed to make it a better experience, so go figure, right? The episode opens and we know that Elliot and Vera are going to have a sit down since we last saw Elliot being stuffed into the trunk of a car. We know it's still Christmas Day and there's a very important Deus Group meeting later in the same evening that Elliot needs to get to. We know that Darlene and Dom are with Janice, but we don't know what's going on with that and how it's playing out. And we know that Whiterose wants to bring Elliot in for a discussion because it's time he learns they're on the same side. Angela and Tyrell are still dead, which isn't great for Philip Price on either account, but he's on his way to the prearranged location to meet with Minister Zhang. Vera has injected himself into this story. He's taken Elliot to Krista's apartment, and Elliot's going to have to get through this before he can deal with anything else. Inside the apartment, the action is broken up into 5 acts. There are titles displayed on the screen as each act opens, and this makes it feel like something important is going to happen. My thinking last week was that Vera was going to trigger Elliot's third altar to reveal himself. That was feeling pretty good as things started moving along. In the first act, we had Elliot. The second brought out Mr. Robot, but alas, I was barking up the wrong tree. The third act didn't produce another personality. That's not to say this episode didn't have something big to reveal, but it started off as a pretty standard hostage situation where the guy we want to win has his back against the wall. Mr. Robot and Elliot mostly work together here, but Mr. Robot's more focused on escaping, while Elliot is more focused on keeping Krista safe. Vera talks a big game, telling a story like he's apt to do about going back to the Dominican Republic and taking over the island. This doesn't do it for him though, and after seeing a shaman, he realizes that Manhattan is the island that he needs to rule. In one of my favorite shots in the episode, Mr. Robot sighs and says, "Settle in, it looks like this is going to be a long one," as Vera takes another hit from his meth pipe. The camera cuts to an overhead shot as he continues to blabber on, and then we move into the other room to reveal that Krista is tied up there. The music and her whimpering more or less drowns out what he's saying, and it's perfect. While I've been critical about Vera's return and just generally not liking the character, I can't overlook the actor's performance here. He does a great job of being a thoroughly unenjoyable player in this game. Also, as the episode goes on, it becomes clear why all those things that suck about him are precisely the right tools to do the job that needs to be done here. I think the thing that stood out to me the most on the rewatch is that when he told Elliot he was more afraid of him than he was of Mr. Robot, I believed it. And even though it didn't make me like him, it did make me appreciate the character's development. Mr. Robot tries his best to defend Elliot and get them out of the situation. He lets everyone know how things are when Peanuts tries to threaten him with a gun. He points out just how dumb Vera's plan to rule New York is, which thanks for that, but Elliot eventually has to take back over to try to entice Vera with all the money he's about to steal from the Deus Group. That part of the plan works, but things fall apart when Ellie tries to shoot his captors with the gun. Javi had found it but left it there, had taken all the bullets out, and now things are officially off the rails. Vera loads the gun and holds it to Krista's head, leaving Elliot to come up with a reason why he should let her live. He ends up saying that he needs her, she helps him, and Vera sees an opening to get what he wants. He insists that Krista and Elliot show him how he helps her, and that means doing a therapy session at gunpoint. Krista resists. Mr. Robot tries to shut it down, but Elliot makes it happen because he can't imagine that Vera's gonna let it go. It starts out normally with Elliot telling her about his mom dying. Vera isn't having that, so he pulls out Krista's folder and he ratchets things up. They make their way to the day when Elliot jumped out of the window. That's the story Darlene told him anyway. Originally, Elliot thought he had been pushed by his father. Krista asks if he remembers jumping out the window or if that's just what Darlene said. She wonders why he he doesn't remember for himself and asks if it's always like that when he loses time. E says only when Mr. Robot takes over, and we establish that he believes Mr. Robot when Mr. Robot says that he exists to protect him. If that's the case, then why would Mr. Robot be protecting him that day? What would he be protecting him from? Why did he grab the baseball bat and swung it at Elliot Alderson? Why hide Darlene in the closet before their dad came into the room? Why jump out the window? When faced with these questions, Elliot makes the realization that he must have been afraid. That doesn't make sense to him though. His dad was his friend. Why would he be afraid of him? Step by step, they inch closer to the truth, and the performances here are truly award-worthy. Even though I was able to put the pieces together while watching of where we were headed, I held on to the last breath with Elliot as he tried to fight away the realization. With pain in her voice that echoes the pain of the situation and what was going on, what's happening in that room, Krista asks, "Did your father sexually molest you?" He replies yes, as if it's only in that exact moment that he's understanding that that is the unbearable truth. It's a rare moment in a TV show that's so heavily theorized about and broken down like every detail that a twist like this can come together. It's not that people haven't made theories about Edward being a bad person or the idea of Elliot being a victim of abuse hasn't been out there, but it hasn't felt like it's been on the collective radar in relation to the endgame, and yet here we are. I really didn't see this coming, and it hit me like a ton of bricks, to be honest. I think it goes without saying that it was handled well and in a way that felt genuine. The acting by everyone involved matched the gravity of the reveal, and Rami Malek really outdid himself in his portrayal of this character, touching that part of himself that he's kept buried for all these years. It was magnificent. The episode doesn't end there though. Vera has one more part to play as he reveals to Elliot that his trauma is the thing that makes him important. He tells Elliot that he was molested as a child as well, and tells him he can find an untapped source of strength in what's happened. Once you've weathered a storm like yours, he says, you become the storm. You hear me? You are the storm, and it's the rest of the world that needs to run for cover. The interaction between Elliot and Vera has its own merits, but it's really just the setup for Vera's end. Just as it's looking like Fernando is getting what he wanted, to be the one to bring Elliot back up after he's been broken down, Krista plunges a knife into his back, killing him. In how it's shot, it almost works as a twist in of itself, in that only after it happens we realize that Elliot must have seen her coming, and that more than engaging with what Vera was saying, he was just trying to keep him from noticing she was there. He falls to the ground, the lights go out symbolically one by one, and the 5-act play comes to an end. It's a gripping hour of television that ticks all the boxes of greatness as a standalone piece of art. The acting, the soundtrack, and the camera work are all turned up to 11. The music is so good it even elevates Vera's monologuing at times in a way that I wouldn't have thought was possible. It also answers one major question that we've had for a long time. What happened that day with the window? Did Edward push Elliot or did he jump? Now we know Mr. Robot took over and that he did in fact jump, but the horrible things his father did actually play a part in pushing him out that window. It's crazy because this is an answer that asks a lot more questions, and it's coming to us late in the game. As much as I love this episode on its own, I have to wonder how it relates to this story coming to a close. Part of the reason Elliot went after E-Corp was to avenge his father's death, and now we're left wondering how much of that was even real. The Mr. Robot alter who he created for protection also looks like his father, so what will that mean for their relationship going ahead? I mean, for what it's worth, Mr. Robot isn't his father. In fact, he's the father he never had, which is clearer after the reveal, but the way things were left, it at least felt like Robot couldn't protect him anymore, so what will that actually mean? The truth is, based on the fact that season 4 is halfway over at this point, we just don't know. It's daring, which I like, but it's also a little scary, which I don't like. My hope is that it'll all make sense when seen as a whole. And my faith really hasn't been shook here because I have been enjoying each episode as they come. I wasn't excited about Vera returning and that turned out swimmingly, so there's no need to worry, right? I mean, historically, I've enjoyed the risks that Mr. Robot has taken, maybe more than some people, so I really do find it a lot more exciting than I do worrying, but I mean, there's there's a lot of balls in the air, and the season opened with only 8 more days for Elliot to live, and we don't seem to be getting to the part where we figure out what it's all about. Like I said, I like that they're taking chances and they're making some really great episodes, and I just hope that it all works out to combine into something that will really give us a memorable ending. I'm really interested to see what you guys think too. Let me know in the comments about what you think about episode 7 by itself and season 4 as a whole. How do we think this reveal changes things that we've taken for granted for so long at this point in the story? I don't think we've seen the last of Mr. Robot because Elliot would need him now more than ever. At the same time, it's hard to not see him as Edward Alderson and to rewrite all those good dad memories we've associated with him. And what about the other? How does the third alter fit into the mix now that things have been turned on their heads with number 1 and number 2? Also, how does Darlene fit into all of this? I tend to think that she didn't know about what happened to Elliot, but I really don't know if that's just because that's what I want to be true. I would have to go back and rewatch the whole thing to get a better idea of how they interacted. If Edward abused Elliot, then we have to wonder about Darlene and even Angela for that matter. It's a lot to process, and I think that I'm just going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. We're officially halfway through the final season of Mr. Robot. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.